It's Yahavy David, St. Clair Speaks, and you are now tuned in to the St. Clair Speaks Show. You are now tuned in to the St. Clair Speaks Show. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the St. Clair Speaks Show podcast. I'm your host, Yahavy St. Clair. Now, guys, I have the honor to introduce another impactful, incredible guest, someone who is influencing others from across the world, all the way from the UK. I had the honor to sit down for an hour and a half with Maxwell Nee. This guy is doing impactful things, coaching entrepreneurs from across the world to scale their business. Co-founder of High Performing Coach. He's built $1 million online coaching businesses through the pandemic of COVID. Now, there was a saying that I would once said earlier last year, early in the pandemic. During this pandemic, there's going to be billionaires, millionaires, and witnesses. So to sit here and talk to Maxwell today, learn how he did it, and dive into his why, and of course, what brings him onto the St. Clair Speaks Show podcast, it's an honor to introduce Maxwell Nee. Maxwell, please give our audience a 3 to 5 minute introduction on yourself, your brand, your business, and of course, what brings you onto the St. Clair Speaks Show podcast.
Awesome. Thank you, Yahavy. You know, I'm not sure there's much I could say to beat that sort of introduction, but I appreciate it, brother. And for me, I'm the CEO, co-founder of our business. And what we do is we help coaches build their business from zero. A lot of our clients, I've never had a high-paying client before, never even had a client before, and we really, really can build anyone on the planet from zero, as long as they're willing to take on everything we've got to give them. And, you shared a bit about how we've managed to scale and what we've managed to do during the lockdown, which has been really, really great. And I would love to share more about how I've done that, so your audience takes away all those value nuggets later on in the show. And for me personally, the reason why I love what I do is I love seeing people achieve new limits, so I'm a true coach in that nature. I love seeing others win. I love being a part of others win. I don't have kids, but I imagine it's a bit like being a proud parent, seeing others win, and that's what's in it for me.
That's pretty incredible. I want to dive into how all of this just came across your lap, like why this business, why now, and what have you learned from this pandemic? Because there's some huge success here, obviously, of course, and I want to dive into that. But what has that experience been like for you? As you mentioned, from the coach side, what are some things that you're taking away from it? I want you to be vulnerable here, but as a human being, is it wow, I'm really out here changing lives? Is it emotional for you? How is that?
Yeah, there are days where work's hard, days where work's tired and long. But then, when a testimonial comes in and a client's in tears and they're so happy that, they've had some sort of transformation in their life or their business, that charges the batteries right up to full, in 60 seconds. So that's really awesome. And I have a lot of fun just solving problems. So, I love just, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I love things breaking because I like to solve them. As long as it's a new problem to solve, I love fixing things, right? So that's what I love about being an entrepreneur. That's what I love about our business.
It's incredible. So I want to dive into it because for me, I don't want to say it's hard for me to consider myself a coach, but there's some ugly side of it, right? Trying to figure it out without guidance, without mentorship. And I tried to do it, but I knew it was ego, right? I'm like, I could do it on my own. But at the same time, numbers don't lie. So at the end, as entrepreneurs, we got to look at the numbers and we have to be brutally honest. Do we need the help? So when I'm reading your story and I'm hearing your story, I'm like, okay, this guy's on to something, right? The proof's in the numbers. Numbers don't lie. Facts are facts. So I want to know what is the conversation like? Are you brutally honest with these entrepreneurs that you're sitting down with and that you're helping? How is that like for you?
Yeah. So, brutally honest is one way to put it, but what I would like to say is I'm authentically straight. I'm so straight with our clients. And what allows me to do that is I am straight with myself. if I can see that there's a mistake I've made, I don't BS myself. Like what it happened just then actually. So we have a new customer care person in training, and they've given someone a response that they have in our company, potential client that is absolutely not what we endorsed, not what we like. They misread and misinterpreted what the client was saying and didn't support them when we could have. So what I like to do in our business is I like to do what hotels do really, really well. So hotels like 5, 6, 7-star hotels are really, really good at turning a complaint into a raving fan. And they do that by, if they mess up a meal, they might overgive and say like, well, let me get the meal for you and let me give you a bottle of champagne to your room. Is it your anniversary? And then like all of a sudden like this, the icky feeling of how you were not supported just evaporates in the wind because they've turned that into a win. And because hotels understand that, the hotel and hospitality and service industry is so highly competitive, and you're one customer away from falling off the mountain. You really, really are. So one of our support team made a mistake. I jumped in. I said, hey, it's Max here, co-founder of the company. I take full responsibility for what our support person just said. He's in training. I apologize. No excuses. Let me offer you this. Bang, 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 bang. And I literally just sent that before this call. And I actually love doing that because I know that there's so much ground to cover that you can cover by turning around those complaints into raving fans, by over delivering on what they expected and initially wanted and more.
It's so interesting that you say this because I was having this conversation with myself earlier this morning as I was washing dishes, and I was saying that the testimonial, the review is just as powerful as the dollar. Would you agree to that, or would you argue to that? Because that's a very powerful point that you just made. Because when we go online, like Amazon, right, we look at these books, we look at these products, you see a lot of reviews. Is that just as important?
Yeah, so it adds the value that I think you're pointing to in terms of like marketing value. But for me, in terms of a company that that we really want to build into something great, it creates like a real sense of accountability. It's what I imagine. If you watch any of those Steve Jobs movies, it's when Steve Jobs is basically yelling. I don't like to yell, and I don't yell, but it's when Steve Jobs basically yelling at his team, "We are Apple. We are the best in the world. We can't do anything less than be the best in the world." So what those reviews do for me in our business is they hold me accountable to like that Steve Jobs level of commitment to excellence. Because you get a whole bunch of great 5-star reviews, and it's nothing less than excellence that keeps it there. So that's what it does for me.
Yeah, but I want to know, how do you remove the emotion apart from, the entrepreneur? Because as you're on this podcast, you are a walking billboard for your brand, right? So how do you separate you as a human being from the emotions? We all do have our days, but how do you respond to, adversity and those days? Do you take personal time? Do you have the moments where you just say, hey, this is me, I'm protecting my energy? How do you respond to that?
Yeah, so to be honest, I'm probably not typical, but I love what I do. Like I pretty much work from the time I open my eyes to the time I close my eyes. And even if I'm not working, like I'm thinking about stuff. But, I think my answer to the question that you're asking is I remind myself that to perform, like our business is called High Performing Coach, to perform as a high performer, not just in my entrepreneurial life, I need to be a high performer in my personal life. So what I mean by that is, performance. So I used to do amateur bodybuilding, and you learn very quickly in amateur bodybuilding or any type of bodybuilding that 80% of your results comes from your rest, not actually lifting the weights. So to perform hard, you've got to rest hard, right? And we've really, really learned that. So, in our business, we've got this culture of work hard, rest hard, work hard, rest hard, because the rest hard is 80% of what happens when your eyes are awake. So that's I think the answer to the question that you're asking. And I love what I do, and I don't feel like I could ever burn out.
I love I love that. I love that. I didn't even know you did amateur bodybuilding. I actually did amateur bodybuilding a couple years ago, and I lost, right? And I have the medal right here. It was three guys, and I finished last, three at third place, but I keep the medal because I know I only lost because I beat myself. And I keep it as a reminder never to get beat because I beat myself. So as you mentioned, you said, you don't get burnt out, you don't get tired because you love what you do. Same thing with the podcast. I love these interviews. I love sitting down with people like you that have different insight. And when you said rest hard, I'm like, whoa, wait, you just made me look at this completely different. And I think that's really incredible. And I could see the value of just what you do because you have these principles and these guidelines that you set yourself to. You set the standard. So I kind of want to jump back to coaching, and I want to know a little bit more on why coaching. Why did you decide to take it this far, and what are some things that you're doing within the next 6 months that the listeners, of course, could benefit from higher performance?
Yeah, so it's cliche, but I would say that I fell into it. I fell into it not accidentally, though. I fell into it as a journey. So, I started my entrepreneurial career about 3 and a bit years ago, and I first started as an online marketer, like an online email marketer, and then I quickly learned that I like that, like 8 out of 10, like that 7 out of 10. So I ended up having 13 different iterations of my niche and my focus and who I wanted to help to eventually land in coaching. So, coaching has been a result of almost like having this clay rock, and I've carved the edges around this sculpture about, what to take away, what I don't like, to end up with what I want, right? Like reveal all the mess around this clay rock to come up with a beautiful sculpture. And that's what I have learned to live into as coaching. And it's my 13th iteration of a niche, within 3 years. So I was like relentlessly just, this isn't it. This isn't quite it. This is closer. This is closer. This is closer. And now I'm here. In terms of what there is next for us in the next 6 months, we have found out what works really, really well in our business. So I've just, I love coaching to the point where I've got 2 coaches. I always have at least 2 coaches. And one of them said to me today, actually, this is a great time for this interview, that Max, you haven't been focused. And I was like, shit, you're right. I haven't been focused. So then as of today, we are tripling, doubling, quadrupling down on what has worked so far and just mastering the heck out of that, even beyond how we feel we've mastered it right now, and staying in our lane, really, really staying in our lane, so that we can be like the Apple or the, what's another great example? Like the Apple or the Virgin or the Tesla of the world, just by really, really staying in our lane.
It's interesting that you say that, because my next question was, do you also believe in the saying, all the great coaches have coaches? And there you go. You just said it. Your coaches has held you accountable. Like, hey, you have to focus. Can you touch on that? What's that like as far as this accountability, having coaches in your corner?
Yeah, it's great, and I think there's only 2 reasons why a coach wouldn't have a coach, right? Either they have never had powerful coaching before, or they have forgotten, right? And often it's the first one. And it's the first one because of a new insight that I've just come up to recently, which is that, in school, we are taught that if we get help from others to do the test, do the exam, that's cheating and that's wrong. In school, we are taught and conditioned that if we get help from others, that's cheating and that's wrong. Like we're taught from the age of 5 for 12, 13 years, that's cheating and that's wrong to get help from others. That's why I believe there's like this culture of, if you get help, then you're, I don't know, less or whatever that stigma is. And but that's basically you saying as a coach that you don't believe in coaching because you're in the industry of help. You're in the industry of there's a better way, of don't do it by yourself, don't do it on your own.
I strongly agree with that. And it's interesting because something when I was younger, I always struggled with authority, and I think if you're one that struggles with authority, you're not going to give into coaching, right? Oh, nah, you can't coach me. You can't coach me. But I actually have a coach, but I have a real estate coach. I have a credit coach. I kind of section the type of coaches that I want. Some people need life coaches, spiritual coaches, different sort of coaches. So it's also, I'm pretty sure if you experience this, that you've sat down with people and it isn't the right fit, right? So for me, I've sat down with people and I'm like, hey, I definitely can't help you, but Maxwell can, or John can, or whomever can. I have no, there's a saying, my old mentor used to tell me this: if I can't help you, I don't want to hurt you. So for me, I live by referrals. Networking is everything for me. It's essential. This is why I love podcasting. Next month makes a year for me, and just building these relationships and these episodes gives me credibility. 1, 2, I know I can make the right call because I'm always in Clubhouse. If someone hears me speak, I know I can make the right recommendation for them. Like, hey, why don't you check out this episode featuring Maxwell? He's helped this much people online better their brand and their business. So for me, it's kind of like, as you mentioned a little earlier, sticking to your lane, sticking with what works, finding what works for you. And this is my sauce. It's kind of like an interview kind of a thing for me now, where I get to dive into what works for you, but also really just study success. So what has the experience been for you on COVID? Because obviously this is not that in-person interview. This is remotely, but what has it been for you just taking advantage of all these resources like LinkedIn, like Clubhouse, TikTok, or YouTube? What has that been like for you, just mastering that online presence?
Yeah, so, before the pandemic and COVID and lockdown happened, 60% of our revenue came from live events, right? Like in-person events. And, it happened, we had an event sold out in London, April last year, and it sold out 5 weeks in advance. Week 4 coming up to the event, we get an email, venues closed, London's locked down, events canceled, sorry. And we were like, shit, what do we do? So then, COVID basically forced our hand to test something that has always been on our minds, but we weren't sure. We weren't sure if we brought our events online through Zoom, that the connection would be the same, that the emotion would be the same, that the engagement would be the same, all that sort of stuff. And what we found was that couldn't be further from the truth. It's probably a combination of, it was, we gave it everything we've got, and the world was just so ready for, this new way of interacting with people, right? There was no more excuses. It's either your business was on pause or you were open to showing up online, right? Your business on pause, open, showing up online. And so that happened. So we moved it online, and our events were just as effective, if not maybe even a little bit more effective. Plus we had a new opening to, not just everyone within the central city of London in the UK, but the whole time zone, right? So we moved from a city model to a time zone model. So we 10x our reach, just by doing this thing, plus not having to pay for tea, coffee, venue, travel, hotel, taxis, cabs, after drinks, all that sort of stuff, right? All of that just gone. So, margins went like this. And another thing that we didn't expect, it was like a perfect storm, actually. As long as you didn't stop, a lot of businesses stopped during the lockdown because they were like, I'll just wait it out. As long as you didn't stop, it was really the perfect storm. We could have easily stopped. We could have easily said, let's just wait. Let's put our event on hold, refund everyone their tickets. But we weren't, we wanted to keep moving. So because we were committed to keep moving, we found solutions. I really believe that if we weren't as committed, we wouldn't have seen those solutions because we wouldn't have been looking for them. But as long as you keep looking, you'll keep finding. And there's a few things that happen. What I found was during COVID, it was almost like, let's say your market, there's 10 people in your market, 2 out of the 10 were on the fence and they were willing to jump off the fence to take some sort of action. And 8 out of 10 disappeared because they weren't actually interested in working with us. So what we found was COVID pushed a lot of fence sitters off the fence and everyone else disappeared. So people just sort of flowed into action into working with us, and because we were there, we were showing up, and we said, hey, you know, this can still work, it's still possible. And also advertising costs on Facebook and LinkedIn and all that sort of thing dropped to what it was like 3 years ago, because there was so many people at home, so many more eyeballs on screens, right? Because people weren't out at the club, they weren't out drinking, they weren't out at restaurants. Everyone had a screen in front of them. So it was like this perfect storm of opportunity if you were willing to take what felt like a scary action at the time.
It's very powerful. And you know what? If you didn't do it, if you didn't take that chance, I don't want to say the resentment is heavy, but man, like the government was at a point where they were just giving away money over here, and everything was just all flipped. But one of the things that this pandemic has taught me, and one of the things that I miss, that a lot of us didn't take advantage of, was that human interaction to go to events. I am itching to go to an event. If you host an event in UK, I'm flying out all the way from New York City, because the podcast created during this pandemic, this is what I created. Now I have these relationships that I could just go and attend an event and sit there and learn, whether it's a seminar, but because we were limited to that because of COVID. And I think from my personal experience and from what I'm hearing from these new entrepreneurs that are coming out of the gate, that people are itching for that. For me, I found this entrepreneurship when I attended a networking event. I had a mentor, right? But I didn't really, at the moment, I didn't know I had a mentor. I was just learning. It was one of those, I want to say trials and tribulations where you kind of like fail and you learn from it. But one of the things that I learned from it was accountability. And I think that's very important for people to have that. So attending events is great. Creating a team is great. Getting out there is great. Putting yourself out there is great. And that's what people are looking for now. I am itching for that in-person engagement, shaking hands. Like, I want to shake your hand. This is great, but there's nothing like that firm handshake, then you guys dive into that. A lot of people miss that. I miss that. I was pretty much just boxed in. This is my studio, and now we're actually building one. So that's exciting too, to just take action. Like you said, results don't come from knowledge, they come from action. So you got to take action, and you got to pretty much just put yourself out there. But I want to know what has, I want to talk about failure for a little bit. And if you've experienced that, not even just during this pandemic, but just any story that you have to share with the audience, how you were able to bounce back from those trials and tribulations to walk in that faith now.
Yeah. Great question. So, I believe.
What's going on, guys? It's Yahavy David, St. Clair Speaks. You are now tuned in to the St. Clair Speaks Show. Thank you for streaming this episode of the St. Clair Speaks Show podcast. Don't forget to visit StclairSpeaks.com and HustleHop.com and stay up to date with St. Clair Speaks Show updates, upcoming guests, live webinar events, and St. Clair Speaks Show Trade Talk. Visit StclairSpeaks.com and HustleHop.com today.
The secret, like what I would call my secret to failure, is not taking it personally. So I'll give you an example. Like when I was, I don't know, in my early 20s, I wanted this job, and I wanted this job so bad. It was my corporate banking job before I became an entrepreneur. And this job, I wasn't qualified for it. I would have been the youngest in the state if I got the job, and all this stuff, all this stuff was stacked against me. But I heard an idea, and the idea was that you don't need to have qualifications to make this job work, this corporate banking job. All you needed was to, really, really connect and have the work ethic, and have the relationship with the team. The team managers actually don't hire on experience as much as people think they do. They hire based on fit and work ethic and things like that. So I thought, okay, I can do that. So, I applied for this job and similar jobs like it 37 times before I got in. I had like 6 interviews, 37 applications. I took people out. I spent, like, as a poor uni student, I took a whole corporate floor out for coffee. I'd spent $500, $600 taking people out for coffee to build relationships and to try to muscle my way into this job. And then I got it, and I really believe what got me through that was, yeah, just removing any personal attachment, any meaning of rejection. So, failure and rejection, that's all meaning, right? But that's all meaning that we put onto things. And it doesn't necessarily mean that unless you choose for it to mean that. So I'll give you another example, right? If I let's say when I have an ex-girlfriend, and we watch this movie and it's the first time we kiss and whatever, all that stuff about that first movie, the first time we kiss, the cinema, the seat, that's meaning I've applied to that movie. But I've applied it there, and I've got to hold it there for it to stay there. The same is with rejection. You have to apply the meaning of rejection to something, and you've got to hold it there and keep it there. So I really believe the secret to moving through failure, like a freight train, like a bullet, is to practice the muscle of recognizing that's meaning that you're putting there, and recognizing because you put it there, you can take it away.
That's very powerful, man. That's very powerful. And not, you said not taking it personal. I'm like, oof, that one hit me because it's hard not to sometimes. To be honest, it's really hard not to. Because you feel like, but you feel this sense of entitlement. But it's also sometimes, of course, rejection is protection, right? So a failure is a deep story within itself. But how was the experience like? I've read a little bit. Correct me if I'm wrong. You moved from Australia to Toronto, Canada. What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, so Australia to Canada, that was, I reached a point where I realized I didn't want any of the jobs that I had at my previous job. I didn't want any of the promotions that I saw in front of me. So I said, what the hell am I doing here? And I quickly realized that I've been playing safe and playing small, because the corporate job was always my plan B. It was my plan B in case if being an entrepreneur didn't work out, because I deep down always wanted to be my own boss, be an entrepreneur, build a company, live what that's like to really own something that I've built and contributed to building. So then I said, you know what? I've been playing safe, playing small for too long. It had been 5 years, of building like this, painting this Sistine Chapel of a plan B, like this beautiful plan B. And it was just so stupid when I realized that, right? So then I said, okay, I need to shift the gear. I need to shift the gear and make myself as uncomfortable as possible, because it's only in being uncomfortable I recognize that I would grow. All those rejections and stuff, yeah, that was uncomfortable, but I was growing with each one, and I could feel it and I knew it. So I picked Canada, Toronto, because it was a place I'd never been before. I had no friends, no place to stay. Had never seen snow before. Like all this stuff. No job, nothing. So I picked a place where I had nothing, so I had to go there, and my only choice was to grow. So then I went there. I slept on couches. I sold stuff to pay for rent. Like all this stuff whilst I was figuring myself out, trying to buy myself time. And yeah, it was great. It was a great learning experience, and I would do it again. I've done it again, actually.
I have this question. I have this question for you, and I want to know if you were from the age of say 14 to 16. No, actually 14, 17. Right now, what would you do? What would you tell yourself right now? Right now, if you were living in this time and you had all of these resources of information, because of course it's different now than it was when we were actually 14 and 15.
Yeah, what I would say, where was I at when I was 14 to 17? I was, yeah, I wasn't really thinking about the future or thinking about, there's nothing really I was scared of. Not because I wasn't scared, but because no one had ever stretched me to think big enough to scare myself. So I think what I would say is something along the lines of, whatever you do, you can have fun doing it. Instead of it being like this like this seriousness, like I don't know what it was like in the US, but like when you come out of school, there's like this seriousness. Yeah, you've got to get into university, you've got to get that job, you got to save up, you got to buy the house, like all this like pressure and like social crap that people bury you with, and a lot of people sink. A lot of people don't learn to swim under all of that. And I've got friends that have 2, 3, 4, 5 diplomas, 5 degrees, but never had a job because they they're striving for perfection, and they're striving for the diploma to give them the confidence before they can apply for the job. But confidence doesn't come before you take an action; it comes after. Your confidence comes after you take the action you never thought you could take. Like I felt an enormous rocket ship of confidence when I got that corporate job, because there was like in my mind, it was like a 1% chance I could get it, and then I got it, and then it was like boom, like you couldn't fill me up with more confidence, because that thing couldn't have been more impossible the day before. So yeah, it would be to do whatever you wanted to do, and know that you can actually have fun. So you can build the life that you want and have fun, instead of it being like this serious thing. I gotta get a job by this date so I can get a house by this date, so I can get a car by this date. And it's just all that crap, all that crap that just I really think it just does more harm than good, for most kids. It definitely did for me, because I was lost for quite a few years straight after school, because it was just like I wasn't meeting that expectation that I felt I had to meet. And then as a result, I applied this meaning to it that I messed up, and I should just give up, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and you also bring up confidence, and then that's something I also want to talk about. Um, Definitely finding confidence at a young age is one, because that's something I thought I had. Now looking back, it's like I had. I don't know. I don't think I had the consciousness, but I had the confidence. And now realizing that, hey, I'm 29. I turned 30 in July. Now I'm like, okay, I got to be at this before I turn 30. I have to be here. It's so interesting, because back then I remember other kids in high school saying, "Oh, you're not going to be successful if you don't get the college degree." Now look, skills create the jobs. Now we live in one of the greatest times. I'm just sitting on this app, like Clubhouse, for example. So much good information. So like it's information at your fingertips, it's connections at your fingertips, but it's also resources, and you get this instant connection. And what I've recently learned is to find confidence through just taking action and not getting caught. And this is something I recently overcome. I want to share with you that information paralysis, whatever. And let's just call a spade, an insecurity of, not thinking that it's possible. Right. So also believing that these things are possible, because at a young age, we didn't see that. We didn't see those possibilities of it being possible from the other side. Now looking at it, podcast hosts sitting here interviewing, successful people like you who've done it, and who's doing it now, and seeing that inspiration, because it's different. And I think you kind of touched on this a little earlier in the podcast. But what I want to know from you is, how do you find the confidence and the ability to do what you do so confidently, as well as accepting that criticism when it doesn't work, right? Or when you do get the negative review, how do you kind of take that and still have that confidence?
Yeah, so there's two different things in that. So the negative review is the meaning. That's the meaning, right? That negative review will only sting based on the meaning that you apply to it. Okay, so if you apply the meaning that, oh, I've got a negative review, I'm no good at this, then you're out of the game. You're on the bench. You're really, really on the bench. You couldn't be further from the court, right? But if you could recognize that you're applying that meaning, and that meaning is actually something that you made up, like, because if 100 different people see that negative review, 100 different business owners, you get 100 different opinions, right? So the truth isn't in the opinion. The truth is what you make the opinion mean, right? Now, in terms of the confidence, like I coach my clients on this all the time, on a sliding scale, there is number one, thinking. There's thinking about doing something, right? And thinking is the opposite of action, right? Because if you're in your head thinking about doing something, if you're in your head thinking about shooting a 3-pointer, you're not holding onto a ball about to shoot a 3-pointer. You're just not. It's the opposite of action. And then on the other side of thinking is confidence. See, confidence comes after you do something you didn't think you could do. Trying to have confidence before you take action is a bit like saying, yeah, I want a baby, but I'll get pregnant after. Give me the baby first and I'll get pregnant after. You know, it doesn't work like that. It really is just like a straight scale: thinking, action, confidence.
That's going to be the ad. This is going to be the ad promo segment I'm going to go with right there. That is spot on. That's a spot on. Because, you know, at some point, you know, imagine if I do not want to be 75 years old and lacking confidence. Are you kidding me? I walked this earth for 75 years and I'm not confident about myself. I want to be confident in my skin, in my ability when I'm 75, 80, 90, right? Because I don't want to live the life miserable, right? So, you know, just seeing this recent pandemic, you know, there's a lot to be confident about. If you're here, if you're surviving, if you're living, you should be confident. But I'm at a point, and this is my mindset, you know, I got a curse here. I'm like, fuck confidence. I'm not fuck confidence, but fuck surviving. I'm not here just to survive. I'm here to thrive. I want to win. I don't want to just participate. I'm not here for participation trophies. So when I look at podcasting, there's so much other podcast platforms that are doing these big numbers. And just the other day, I was looking at my numbers and I'm like, yeah, this doesn't define me. What defines me is the connections that I establish and what I do with these connections, because it goes back to the saying, you know, what's the point of having soldiers if you can't use them? Right? What's the point of having a network if you can't help your network connect with other people? So when I have people, you know, that like Maxwell Nee that comes on the podcast that's sharing all of this insight to overcoming those obstacles that we put in front of ourselves. And you could easily say this, the only one that puts the pressure on ourselves is ourselves. So when we have these deadlines, we set these expectations that we must live in the expectations. So I want to ask you two questions here. How do you overcome those expectations, right? And how do you how do you overcome the pressure that you could put on yourself with labeling these expectations upon yourself?
Yeah, okay. So I will answer that. Let me answer one other thing first of confidence, because I think this will add a lot of value, right? So consider that confidence, self-belief, whatever you want to call it. Consider that as a baby, you already have that. Everyone is already born with it. It's just waiting to be revealed. How do I know this? Because if you say to a 5-year-old, if you jump off this slide, you can fly, they will do it, right? They'll have no shadow of a doubt, and you'll be responsible for catching them, right? And so what does that tell us? That tells us that as a baby that hasn't had a lifetime of people saying no, you know, people you know, learning rejection. I believe rejection is learned. It's learned because babies don't know it. They don't know when to stay quiet. They don't know manners. They don't know whatever. It's all learned. So just recognizing that all the shit that's holding you back was learned means that you can unlearn it. So you, me, everyone listening to this podcast, everyone on the planet already has all the confidence that they could possibly want. The only thing is that they've buried it down with misinterpreted and unbalanced, misconstrued learnings. And they've buried it down so that it's like this. My business partner shares this analogy. It's like a gold statue. It's like everyone is born with a gold statue. And then at some point, you know, by the age of 20, through a combination of experiences, you've thrown mud over it. Because, you know, when you're 5, you can do anything. You can do anything, run to anyone, ask anyone any question. Rejection doesn't even exist but then you learn the meaning of rejection. You learn all of that. And that's great because you can unlearn it.
powerful thing, man. Rejection is a very powerful thing. Yeah, I've just recently overcome that with, I was doing real estate wholesaling, um, and I'm making these calls to these sellers, and I'm getting rejection all day. You know, when you're doing real estate, these people are like, they're about to lose their homes. Of course, you know, there's a lot of driven emotion there, so they're cursing me out. They're hanging up on me, and it's like after a while, you get 75 curse outs, or you know, this much hangs up in a row. You know, that rejection, I don't say it starts to rub off on you. You just start to look at it. But how do you study that rejection? Do you look at it like, okay, how can I use this to my advantage? Is this rejection for me to get better?
Yeah, so the first thing is that language is everything, right? So I'm maniacal about language with our clients, and even the word rejection creates a disempowering state of what actually happened. So rejection is a story. They rejected me as a story. What actually happened is you asked someone a question and they said no. That's it. No meaning. So you need to get to the bottom of there's no meaning to let go of this idea that we have this learned idea of that when someone says no to me, that's a rejection. And consider this, you know, when you're a baby, the reason why you know, rejection happens the way it happens to people is because when everyone was a baby, at some point we pointed at something, at a toy or candy, and mum or dad came to us and said, look, no means no, stop it. No means no, stop it, listen to me, no. That's when we learned it. We learned that no means no, stop it, we can't have what we want. And then no wonder why we're so afraid to just point to things and say, hey, I want that, or go for that, because we were you know, we were told by our parents, and there's nothing wrong with it. Like it's necessary to tell a kid, say no. You can't say yes to a kid for every little thing, but just recognizing that it's learned. It's all learned.
So I want to kind of like piggyback to my question about, you know, pressure and expectations. I think that just falls in the same category. How do you, you know, how do you overcome that pressure and in the expectations that come with that?
Yeah, so I believe the answer to this question is different for everyone, and I believe that everyone already knows the answer to this question. And let me pull it out of the audience. So if you're in the audience right now, and you know you want to know how to look at or how to deal with expectations or pressure or whatever, I want you to ask yourself this question: what would your 90-year-old self say to you right now? What would they say to you right now? Whatever that is for you, that's your answer.
Whew, that's it. That's it. I think that answers a lot of questions, right? So I kind of want to talk about success. You know, everyone, of course, you know, everyone's going to answer this in, you know, their own opinion. Of course, you know, what's your definition of success? Oh, success is happiness. It's this, it's that. It's living within purpose. Like, how do you define success, and at what moment? Because I've had moments, and I'll be quite honest with you, where I've hit some very successful points, and I haven't felt successful, right? Like you know, from the outside looking in, some people would say, "Oh, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this," but some people don't feel that fulfillment of success. So, what's success for you, and how do you define it?
Yeah. So, what's success for me, and how do I define it? You know, I don't really like the word success. I think it creates a box, you know, and when you have a box, an expectation is a box. You know, I should be successful by this date. That's a box. Whenever you have a box, you've got a target that you can miss, right? And if you've got a target you can miss, you got like it's either full satisfaction or disappointment. There's nothing in the middle, you know, and it's not realistic to always be fully satisfied. So you're setting yourself up to fall into disappointment at some stage of the journey. I'm not saying don't be driven, like go for what you want, but like if I'm ever talking to any of our clients, I'd say just, you know, why is there such a big attachment to success? Like why have you ever considered that you could just that instead of having things that need to have labels, that you could just do what you love and be rewarded for it, and learning to love the climb. You know, why do you have to reach the top of the mountain? It's when you're attached to reaching the top of the mountain that you always have somewhere to fall off from. You know, compared to if you just learn to love the climb, you know, like Elon Musk, he loves the climb of getting the human race on Mars. He doesn't know if he'll reach it. He doesn't care, but he just loves the climb. Like even if he died tomorrow, he'll die as happy as he is, even if he had landed the human race on Mars, because he loves the climb that much. Like the top of the mountain doesn't mean anything. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, man, it's all about it's all about the journey, not the destination, right? And what you take away from the journey, these little these little moments, and they have the largest ripple effect for sure. You know, just in the moment of pursuing anything. And I love the analogy that you used with the box, and just of course, boxing yourself in and setting these expectations, because if you miss, you're going to be bummed out. You're going to be depressed about it. You're going to be like, oh, I'm not good enough, or yeah, it's going to happen. But I love it, man. I'm really loving this interview. You're breaking down so much that I don't want to say it's so much, saying that, oh, like it's simple, but yeah, it's very simple. But as simple as it sounds, it's very hard for people to apply this, right? Read a book every day, work out every day, right? Eat healthy. We know these things are good for us, yet we don't train our mind. And you kind of want to piggyback to what you said earlier, and kind of like unlearning these things from when we were younger, reteaching ourselves now, and really just studying, right? Just really studying ourselves and just making time for ourselves. So I have another question for you, of course. Now, I kind of want you to describe, a high performing coach in five words, right? 5 words that come to mind. Go.
Okay. Committed, powerful, resourceful, authentic, and vulnerable.
Now I want you to break down why each 5.
Okay, cool. So committed is, commitment. A lot of people are scared of commitment, right? Because they're scared of what happens if they don't meet their commitment. But there's something that happens to humans in their brain when they commit to something. So I always say to our clients, a commitment is there to empower you. You know, if you say to a pro athlete, look, get committed to something, and they go to sleep that night making a decision, they're going to get committed to a gold medal, all of a sudden their life, everything starts to line up, because they've got a finish line. See, as humans, if we don't have a finish line, something to run towards, which is basically like a commitment, then if we don't have goals to aim for, goalposts to run towards, goals to shoot, then we can get really, really stuck, right? So, I really believe that without committing, you lose so much more than whatever rejection or failure or anything you perceive if you don't get really, really committed to something.
Damn. Now, powerful, then I believe resourceful.
Yeah. Okay. So powerful is, it's a bit vague. I didn't really want to say that word, but nothing else came to mind. So let's go with it. So powerful for me is, it's basically just like showing up. So it's the equivalent of someone who really, really wants something compared to someone that is so-so. It's the equivalent of the person who is let me give you an example. Let's use Mike Tyson as an example. So I read this quote once by Mike Tyson. It said something like, I would be up at 3:30 a.m. in the morning running every morning, even when I wasn't training, because I knew the other guy wasn't. So it's like, that's what I mean by powerful. I mean, like, really, really, like, tweaking all the 1%, all the 1% advantages you could have in whatever you're doing, and looking for those, and looking for more and more and more, and just like really getting 2 hands around the cake and putting 10 fingers into it and being like, I'm going to really, really grab the throat of this opportunity right now. And you're going to have to either kill me, or I'm going to have to really, really change my mind about letting it go.
I love that. I love that. I love that you used Mike Tyson, man. Oh man, that guy is ageless. Mike Tyson is ageless, and that for one is inspiring, right? To pick that dream back up again. So, just imagine, man. I just only imagine. Now let's move on to. I believe you mentioned resourceful, right? So break that down for us.
Yeah, so one of my business mentors shared with me this idea. I don't know the exact quote, but the idea is that to the resources that we have available to us isn't actually based on what is available to us. It's based on what we see as available. It's not based on what's actually there. It's about how much we see that's there. So resourceful is about looking. It's basically looking with like 2 eyes, because if you look for something, you'll find it. If you're looking for problems in the world to victimize yourself, you will find them. If you're looking for signs that tell you should be an entrepreneur, you'll find them. If you're looking for like whatever you look for, you'll find. That's what resourcefulness really means for me.
And I believe the next one, there was another one as well. You said vulnerability.
Yeah, I think I said authentic and then vulnerability.
Yeah. Either or. Touch on either one.
Cool. Let's start with authentic, right? So, authentic's like this sexy word, and everyone wants to be it, but it's quite hard to articulate what it means. And since we started swearing, I love that. So authenticity for me is basically not bullshitting yourself. And not bullshitting yourself, not bullshitting others. What that looks like is it's a bit like how, let's say you've got a group of friends and one of them always asks you to go out for dinner. And for some reason, you find a reason to say no, and deep down, that you just don't want to invest the time with this person. Like they're a 7 out of 10 friend, and like they're sort of cool, but they're not. And the conversation's sort of there, but it's not. So where people are inauthentic is when they say, yeah, let me know when you're free. When they really want to say, you know what, I don't want to invest my time with you. That's what they really want to say. And I'm not saying go out and say that and crush people around you, but I mean, what's more authentic? How could you be more authentic? How could you not bullshit yourself? Because every time you tell a lie, you've got to tell yourself another lie first. You got to tell yourself another lie that it's a good idea to tell this lie, compared to just being straight and saying, no, I'm just, I'm not interested.
And keeping it 100, man. You got to keep it real. Just say I'm not interested. That's it. With LinkedIn, it's funny. We talk about this. Then we'll jump into vulnerability. I'm keep getting these sales messages, and it's not. There's nothing wrong with saying no, right? And just keeping it real versus stringing people on. Oh, maybe next week, Maxine, or whatever. Just keep it real. So let's dive into vulnerability.
Yeah, so vulnerability, it's funny, vulnerability is keeping it real. Vulnerability isn't like going around crying every day. It's keeping it real to the point where, let's say, what's an example? Let's say you just went through a breakup, right? You're a guy, went through a breakup, and your boys say, hey bro, you're all right? And, a lot of guys might fall into the trap of saying, yeah, man, don't care about her, don't care, like all this tough guy stuff, right? when really they want to say, yeah, bro, I'm a bit sad, to be honest, but I know I'll get over it. But yeah, it's sad. Like that's not even completely being vulnerable, but it's closer than, yeah, man, no, screw her. You know, I don't care. You know, where's the next one at? You know, all that stupid stuff, right? So, so vulnerability is just basically being human.
Oh man, it's interesting you say that because men are human beings too, man. It's okay to cry, right? So, man, vulnerability, it's tough. And being brutally honest, this was really good. And I'm like, I'm really in it today. I'm in my podcasting host mode today with these real good questions today because I wanted to know. How do you think? How do you perform? Because how you think is actually how you perform. And then you said something about thinking isn't taking action, and I'm mind blown by that statement because there's always a message in meeting people. I strongly believe that there's billions and millions of people that walk this earth, right? But what is the coincidence of me and you crossing paths, right? For me to sit here and hear your story, for the listeners to hear your story, what is the biggest thing that you want the listeners, not even just listeners, just anyone that's just following you to take away from this episode, but to take away from you in particular? What's a message that you really want to put out there for people?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with asking for help. You know, there's nothing wrong with asking for help. There's nothing wrong with getting things wrong. You know, wrong is just it's just an idea. You know, things are wrong, that's wrong, I'm wrong. You know, we learn in school that there's right or wrong. You know, and we learn that to try to be better humans. But you know, we sort of learn that a bit too much. We learn that a bit too much because then it it it's we start putting it in the wrong places. Um, like if I don't get this job, that's wrong, or I'm wrong, or my career choice is wrong, or the last 5 years have been wrong. You know, all this like wrong making um, doesn't help anyone. You know, that doesn't help anyone. And the biggest one is, yeah, there's nothing wrong with getting help or asking for help.
Man, this was really dope. I actually this was the one for me. I have my interviews where I sit down with someone like you and I hear all this inspiration, but to see it is one thing, to hear it is one thing, but to actually sit down and learn more about you. And thank you for being so vulnerable on the podcast. And you're a high performance coach because you've shown that vulnerability, right? That's vulnerability right there. Just touching on how you just overcome failure, faith, and just taking action. It's really incredible. What are some things? It's March 16th right now, right? It's March 16th. We're recording this podcast episode. Um, I don't want to say the next 6 months from now or the next year from now. What does things look like for you? What can people and of course the listeners can look forward coming from your side of what you're doing with your brand and your business? Any events coming up?
Yeah. So we have like a whole cocktail worth of events. You know, we have workshops, free workshops every week. If you want to check one of them out, I can leave a link in the show notes. You know, if you jump to our website, highperforming.coach, it's on the homepage. We got free ones every week. We've got like new challenges, new things. Like we like to keep things fresh with new things here and there. But you know what I'm really excited about is I'm really excited about the next challenge that's in front of us, which is moving from a bunch of people that started a business together to building a team and then building like a company, and really honing that in and really yeah, bringing people together because I see it as a bit like what's his name, Phil Jackson, right? Phil Jackson put together the Chicago Bulls. It's like that. Like you got to put the right players in the right place, and then then you just got to watch this magic happen. So I'm really excited to create my own dynasty. Not that it's mine, like it's all of ours in the team, but I just said that it's mine. Really excited to build a dynasty, and hopefully there'll be a show about our dynasty someday. No, I'm joking, but yeah, I'm excited to see what's possible in our business and the team that we have, and bringing people together and everything like that.
Oh man, I love it. I love it. I love it. Dynasty, Phil Jackson, just greatness and just building. I love how you kind of took it back and just mentioned community and just growing together. All of that is just incredible within itself. Another incredible podcast episode of the St. Clair Speak Show podcast. Sitting down with Maxwell Nee. Guys, this one was an honor and privilege. If there's one thing that you could take away from this episode, please let us know in the comment section when you watch this video or if you stream this episode of the podcast. Give us a review. You know, what did Maxwell say today that really stuck out to you, right? What are some things that you could take away from this episode that you're going to apply? But what do I always say? What good is information if we don't apply it? So take action, because thinking clearly is not action. So take this action. I'm excited for this podcast episode, and I'm excited to see, Maxwell, what you're going to do in the future. I want to put this out there now, and I want to put this in the universe. I can't wait to meet you in person at an event. We're going to do this remote interview now, but I want to put this out there now so I could use this piece of content as promo, as I told you. So, because it's time to get out there, guys. You know, the economy's opening back up. Jobs are opening back up. There's this synergy that's happening right now. So now is the time. Now is not the time to just hear another good podcast interview. Now is the time to actually reach out to Maxwell. So if you need, the workshop training, if you need that coaching and that mentorship, so if you need that accountability in your corner, look, it's here. The proof's in the pudding. Energy doesn't lie, right? So you hear the story, you see the proof. Now put the plan to work, put the action to work. And you know what? You're always one idea away from changing your life. And what changed mine was this podcast, to hear incredible stories like Maxwell's. Like always, guys, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the St. Clair Speak Show podcast, streaming now on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Overcast, Radio Public. You could watch this full interview on my YouTube channel, Yahavy St. Clair, and the St. Clair Speak Show page. Like always, guys, I will see you in the next one. It's that time. I'm out. Peace.